Hey y'all, it's Madison with the Most Haunted City on Earth podcast. Before we start the episode, I wanted to update y'all on a few important changes we're making to the podcast and its schedule. Our director-producer, JT Timmons, has come to the conclusion by using Spotify analytics that quite a few of our listeners are struggling to keep up with the amount of content we produce every week. Basically, people are falling behind, and he, myself, Chris, and Debria have decided that starting today, July 9th, 2024, we'll be releasing one episode a week every Tuesday at 12 a.m. But fear not, as this change is for the best because the episode length and quality will incur a serious upgrade. Every episode will now extend longer than an hour, and JT and I will have an entire week to focus on the single episode and make sure it's a structured, sewn-tight, deep dive into the haunted topic we are covering. If you're a parajunkie, we've got good news for you too. Our highly successful 30 to 40-minute Parajunkie-only pre-show talk we call The Fix will now be recorded and uploaded as a weekly episode you can only access on Patreon. All paid members $5 a month and over will have full access to all the fixes every week. Alrighty, y'all. Enjoy the episode and stay spooky. I am Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susie.
And we're paranormal specialists who live in the most haunted city on Earth, Savannah, Georgia. Every day is Halloween in our line of work, so join us as we spin true tales of haunts, murders, and disturbing Savannah history. I'm Madison.
I'm Chris.
And welcome to the most haunted city on Earth. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the most haunted city on Earth. My name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susie.
And I'm Pickles.
Pickles.
Pickles. Ooh, pickles.
That came so naturally.
It really did.
So that's we used to do a old prospector.
Oh,
and the old prospector character would always, pickles.
Oh. Let me tell you something. I'm going down to get some gold. Pickles.
I did the chipmunk voice for all of that.
Oh my God.
There you go. You missed the old prospector, but you got a chipmunk instead.
Yeah, you got a chipmunk prospector. Well, welcome, everybody. We are going to be doing a new take on our usual structure here on the podcast. So basically, if you didn't hear the announcement that should have just played at the beginning of the episode, if you're one of those who skip through, we know you're out there.
Get to the meat.
Then they're going to skip through this one.
Probably.
It's important. Don't skip through
it. It is. This is important, everybody, because there is changes.
Changes.
So, I'm going through changes.
Anyway, how to do that
I'm sure
one.
that's copywritten, but anyways. So if you missed the announcement, the very important announcement, we are changing up our schedule a little bit. So as y'all know, for a long time, we've been posting twice a week. That is no longer going to be a thing. But don't worry, that's not a bad thing.
Yep.
So we are going to be doing a single, longer, deep dive type episode every week. And that will be every Tuesday at 12 a.m. So that does mean there's no longer going to be a Saturday episode for the public. But the Saturday episode is going to be over on Patreon, and it is going to be The Fix. So essentially, we do a pre-show sort of talk, or we discuss certain paranormal topics that are only seen by the Parajunkies, usually only live, but now we are recording it, and that will go up on Saturdays on Patreon. So if you do need your extra fix, you know where to find us.
Hey.
But
all right, let's get into some nightmare news.
yes. So nightmare news.
Nightmare news.
Nightmare news.
Hold on, Chris. I got you.
Oh.
1 second. And go for it.
Nightmare news.
Nice.
Ding, 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 ding. So, with our nightmare news, some of you might have seen this because if it came across our plate, then you probably saw it on the news as well. But in the early hours of June 5th, 2024, employees at the Red Rocks Amphitheater in Morrison, Colorado, reported an extraordinary sighting. Around a dozen workers observed a large disc-shaped UFO hovering silently in the sky above the iconic concert venue. Described as several hundred feet long and dark metallic in color, the UFO featured 3 levels of lighted windows resembling a large 3-story office building.
Good Lord.
So let's just take that in for a second. Could you imagine a floating office building just in the sky?
Wow.
And which I'm sure was really cool, because if you've ever seen the Red Rocks Amphitheater, it is a super unique setup, literally in the middle of the Red Rocks kind of deserty area.
It would look like a scene out of Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I pictured Nope in my head.
Yeah, I did too.
The Nope is not as big. That
Yeah.
ship was nowhere near the size that they're explaining. Although this is interesting because it brings up my father, who was a very practical human being. He was a command sergeant major in the Army, very down to earth. I once asked him if he had ever seen a UFO, and he said once.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh, and so I'm thinking the story is something flew across the sky.
Right.
Yeah.
Basically, he said he was traveling west, and I want to say he might have been in like the Illinois, Indiana area, but all these cars were pulled off to the side of the road. And as he's driving, he sees all these cars pulled off the side of the road. He pulls off the side of the road himself. He gets out, and he notices that everyone is looking in this direction. So he looks over, and he sees what he described as a disc about the size of a football field floating very slowly in the sky. So when this report said hundreds of feet, I'm like, that's interesting, because the only other real clear personal account, because I've had a lot of experiences myself seeing things in the sky that I didn't know what they were, but they're very glancing views of things like shooting by, not this was like a large witness, a large group of people standing on the side of the road, all like pointing at this thing in the sky, and the description was 300 yards, or 100 yards, 300 feet, this big gigantic thing hanging in the sky. And so, when that description was read, I was like, that kind of reminds me of that, because it was red. It was from their vantage point, it was like they were looking at the bottom of something, and all they could see was like a red oval in the sky.
Ooh.
That would be super creepy.
Wow, that's a cool story.
That is very cool. And it's even more fun when it's coming from somebody that you're like, I know you're not fantastical.
Right, exactly. There are no ghost stories here. There's no,
Exactly.
not going to hear, and even if it was, I felt like it would be something just not explained, but that was pretty stellar. And I think he kind of brushed it off as like, could it have been a weird cloud? But obviously no one, a whole group of people aren't pulling off to the side of the road to look at a weird cloud.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, it takes a lot to get a ton of people to just stop and gawk, But so this sighting occurred at approximately 1 a.m. and lasted about 30 seconds. Witnesses reported that the object initially remained stationary before slowly tilting at an angle and moving eastward, eventually fading from view as if it dissolved into the ether.
Wow.
Cloaking device.
Cloaking device.
The UFO made no sound during the encounter, adding to the mystery of the event. One of the employees reported the sighting to the National UFO Reporting Center, describing how the craft caught their attention and then vanished once it seemed to realize it was being observed. The report stated that everyone present confirmed as seeing the same phenomenon and emphasizing the collective nature of the experience. This incident is part of a broader pattern of UFO sightings in Colorado, which is a state that is known for frequent reports of unidentified aerial phenomena. And in 2023 alone, Colorado had over 100 reported UFO sightings.
Dang.
And
it feels like the sightings are skyrocketing. I
Yes.
think more and more
No
people
pun
are seeing
intended.
UFOs, and it begs the question of, recently there's a lot of government disclosure as to the existence of UFOs, and there comes this gateway question, which is, which came first, seeing or believing? Ooh. Is it possible that we could not see them because we were holding out our belief against them, but now that there is more and more reports of them being authentic, are our minds opening up to see them? Or is it they were releasing this information because they sensed that there was going to be this uptick of people seeing these things. Was the government aware that there's going to be more UFO activity? So now they're trying to get ahead of the story so that it doesn't induce panic by very casually announcing on a Tuesday afternoon that there are UFOs and we have been monitoring them and in contact with them, which garnered no real attention. Like, we didn't lose our minds over the government disclosing their ongoing efforts to categorize or follow and track UFOs.
This feels like the beginning of an X-Files episode in 2024 where the podcasters are like talking about the aliens that will abduct them like later on.
Oh,
yeah. This storm is actually just a ship hanging over us.
You're right.
Yeah, and if you hear any loud crashes and thunderings, there is a massive storm while we are filming this. But to end that, the sighting had basically added to the category that Colorado is ranked the 12th in the U.S. for that sort of type of incident. So essentially, Colorado is the place to be if you want to go see aliens.
I wonder if that has to do with the fact that there's a...
Yep, I've heard that.
Yeah. If there's a lot of higher altitude living in Colorado.
Yeah.
You know, is living at a higher altitude. Because my most compelling UFO experience happened in Bolivia, and I was in the very top of the Andes Mountains. And I think it was a meteor. But something flew overhead and it was so bright that it lit the ground up. And as it went by, it crackled like the striking of a match across the sky.
Ooh. Oh.
And it lit everything up, and we looked up and we saw it fly by, but it did not move as you would expect a meteor to move, because you would think that would be very fast.
Yeah.
But we were able to track it as it moved overhead. It lit everything up around us and then went over the edge of the mountain range. And then it turned out when we asked locals, they're like, "Oh, yeah, we see that kind of stuff all the time." Did it? And they actually asked if it turned. Did it turn?
Oh,
and I was like, "No, it just went straight overhead." And they're like,
"Wow,
no,
odd."
Yeah, very odd.
Okay,
look at what Alex said on the live stream.
Yeah, Alex said it's the 1-year anniversary from last year's bombshell announcement of alien life.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's weird we're doing this.
There
that
you go.
Is
That's
the synchronicities.
Weird. The synchronicities in life are freaky sometimes.
They are.
What the heck? We should do a podcast episode about synchronicities.
Yeah, we could definitely do that. We could definitely do that.
Yeah, y'all, the crackle in the audio that you just heard maybe like a minute or two ago, where Chris and I were like, "Yep, there it is." There seems to be something really weird happening, because I'm hearing it in the headphones that I have on, and it's very apparent of this, like, it's like...
And it corresponds with the lightning.
This arc of electricity.
Not the thunder. When the lightning goes, the crackle happens. It's very interesting.
Very strange.
Fun. So fun.
Yeah, I'm sure all of our theater equipment in there is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Perfectly safe. Yeah. No reason to worry about the high-end electronics and their susceptibility to power surges.
Help.
Or drawing lightnings from the heavens down to us upon our heads.
It's about time we use this damn insurance we've been paying like $1 bajillion for the last couple of years.
Well, there you go.
It's very true.
You can buy all new equipment.
Ooh.
You hear that, Thor?
Speaking JT's language.
Speaking my language.
But before we get into the main meat of the episode,
we got some meat.
We do have a couple more announcements. So, Chris, would you like to tell everybody about our guests that we're going to have next week?
Live stream Monday at 3 p.m.
Yes. Next week, we are going to be hosting Ryan and Kim Dunn. They are the owners of Afterlife Tours here in Savannah, Georgia. They are also paranormal investigators with a great long history of doing some really, really impressive paranormal investigations. Ryan has authored several books, I believe under the Savannah Afterlife title. And it's Savannah Afterlife 2, the Confessions of a Paranormal Investigator. So yes, very excited to have them on the show. They are a great resource, and hopefully we can join them on one of their paranormal investigations, they tend to go to some of the more populous and popular places. I think they just went to Trans-Allegheny. I think they've been to the battleship in Charleston. Is it a battleship?
Battleship.
Aircraft carrier? Is there an aircraft carrier? Anyway, they've definitely hosted multiple paranormal hunts all along the Eastern Seaboard, and I would love to join them on one of them.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
It'd be a lot
Dope.
of fun. But they will be joining us for our episode next. We're going to be filming on Monday, and we're going to be live streaming that for the Para Junkies at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So you know where to be if you are a Para Junkie. But also, speaking of Para Junkies, we figured it's a good time to clarify some things for those of you who might not be familiar with some of the little nuances of Patreon. And there's actually some interesting ways to trial being a Para Junkie, if you will. So I'm going to hand that over to JT.
Yup. And I'll make this quick, y'all. I know you want to hear about the Lemp Mansion, but basically, if you're on the edge of becoming a Para Junkie, you can sign up yearly to Patreon, and you can receive a thick discount. If you wanted to do it by year, annually instead of monthly, you can also try it out for a week, which is pretty dope. And you can like see what it's like to actually be a Para Junkie and see all and participate in the chats and all of that stuff. And then you could also become a free Para Junkie, which you don't get to see nearly everything. You get to see about 20% of the things that we post, maybe a little bit less, but you could definitely become a free Para Junkie. That's pretty cool. So anyway, and then I just wanted to mention that we are currently organizing our next trip. We're going to announce where we're going to be headed soon. Megan, Chris, Maddie, Debria, and I have to finalize a couple things, get with the Ghost Brothers, but it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. It's gonna be dope. So, Madison,
The Lemp Mansion.
oh yeah. Wait, no, here, hold on. Let me see if I can come up with 1 second.
JT's picking my sound.
Yep. All right, so Madison, say the Lemp Mansion. No, not yours. No, I put it on yours. Yeah.
Mine does it now?
Yeah, yours does it now.
Crazy.
The Lemp Mansion.
It just sounds so weird when you do it.
Why? What do I sound like?
I don't like kind of like a gay troll. Like
Well,
Does she sound like Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs?
yes. Okay, that's it. Yeah. Don't say the line.
Do you think I'm pretty?
Not that line.
but I want to say the line.
No, don't say that line.
Okay, we're about to.
Anyways,
It puts the lotion on the skin.
Okay.
Okay.
And we're back.
All right, so we're gonna do the Lemp Mansion
The
today,
Lemp Mansion.
Which has been on our list to deep dive into for forever, and I don't know why we're just now getting to it, but I felt like it when I was picking the episode topic.
Yeah.
And also, JT knows nothing about this.
Zero.
So
Zero. She said that I was going to love this,
Yes.
and when this woman knows me. Obviously, she's my wife. She knows me better than anybody on this freaking planet. So when she says I'm going to love something, I was like, "Don't tell me." I want just completely natural reactions. So I don't know anything about this. She actually put the photos in for the live stream. I didn't do that. So
yeah.
and she put in an order. So all I got to do is just hit it.
Yes. So, yeah. And also, trigger warning for this episode. I know you're already in it, but this story has a lot of heavy content to it. A lot of talk of suicide. It's got abuse and very heavy theming of that death. So, I mean, obviously, most of you must be okay with death to a degree if you're listening to this podcast, but figuring that I should be putting that out there.
Lemp family tragedies are plentiful and dark.
Exactly. So, and with that, let's start out. So we're going to start with the history of the Lemp family and the Lemp Mansion in general. So it all goes back to our good friend, well, not good friend, we don't know him, but Johann Adam Lemp. So that's going to be our first photo, JT.
Yep, did it.
Cool. So Johann Adam Lemp arrived in St. Louis, Missouri from Eschwege. Eschwege? You lived in Germany. How do you pronounce that? Eschwege.
Eschwege. Yes, you're right.
Eschwege, Germany.
Eschwege.
And
Now it's all lost meaning.
exactly.
From Germany.
He's from Germany, and he moved to St. Louis in 1838. Lemp originally planned to be a grocer, but his store was unique for its ability to supply an item sold by none of his competitors, lager beer.
Ooh.
Yes. Lemp had learned the art of brewing this style of beer under the tutelage of his father in Eschwege, and the natural cave system under St. Louis provided the perfect temperature for aging beer, which I did not know about St. Louis before I learned of this story. I had no clue that there was this cave underneath the city.
Yeah.
Which is
I
super
actually
cool.
got to go through the caves in the Lemp brewery.
What?
And there was like a swimming pool and a bowling alley down there and a theater.
Yep.
All under the ground, all under between the Lemp brewery and the Lemp Mansion.
So it's super cool. But in 1840, Lemp abandoned the grocery business to build a small brewery at 112 South 2nd Street. And the brewery was incredibly successful.
Is that this one, Maddie?
Yes. That is it.
All right. Gonna show it.
So William J. Lemp succeeded his father. Also, Jay, if you want to show their one of their original brew logos, it's the second
I did
photo.
that. Yep.
Cool. And then we're on to William J. Lemp.
Okay. Here we go. Bam. There he is.
This guy. So William J. Lemp succeeded his father as the head of the brewery, and he soon built it into an industrial giant. In 1864, a new plant was built at Cherokee Street and Carondelet Avenue. The size of the brewery grew with the demand for its product, and it soon covered 5 city blocks. That is a massive boom in such a short period of time of making this beer, which is really interesting. But in 1870, Lemp was by far the largest brewery in St. Louis, and the Lemp family symbolized the city's wealth and power. In 1892, the brewery was incorporated as the William J. Lemp Brewing Company, and in 1897, 2 of the brewing industry's titans joined together when William Lemp's daughter, Hilda, married Gustav Pabst, if you recognize that last name.
Oh.
Yep.
That was a
Wow.
Pabst.
No way.
Of the noted Milwaukee brewing family.
Yeah, Pabst Blue Ribbon.
So the Lemp Mansion was built in the early 1860s and was subsequently purchased by William J. Lemp as a residence and auxiliary brewing office, or brewery office, I should say. He didn't brew any of the beer in his office, but although it was already an impressive structure, Lemp used his massive brewery fortune to turn the 33-room house into a Victorian showplace. So it was one of the few houses in the city to have a radiator system, which for some of you probably are like, okay, but that is interesting to note because it shows just how wealthy this family was, because that was an incredibly expensive thing to have.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So
And St. Louis gets bitter chill
Exactly.
in the wintertime. So yeah.
yeah, it's just a highlight of how incredibly filthy rich these people were. But
Filthy.
the grand staircase was removed to accommodate an open-air lift that ran the gamut of the house. And in 1904, the house was completely renovated. So to give you a little bit of a understanding of how the house is laid down, so to the left of the main entrance is the former brewery office where William J. Lemp Jr. committed suicide, which we'll talk about all of these suicides in a little bit more depth as we go on. To the right is the parlor with its hand-painted ceiling and intricately carved mantels of African mahogany. And behind the parlor is an atrium where the Lemps kept exotic plants and birds. Other unusual fixtures in the room are a barber chair and a sink with glass legs. And all I could think of was the barber chair from Sweeney Todd.
Nice.
And I'm like, because it feels right with all the tragedy that this family went through. I don't know. I'm like, why wouldn't there
Why
also
wouldn't? Yeah,
be
sure.
a Sweeney Todd barber chair? But at the rear of the house are 3 massive vaults that the Lemps built to store great quantities of art objects. And the Lemps were such avid art collectors that they could not display all of their acquisitions. Each vault is 15 feet wide, 20 feet deep, and 13 feet high. There was a tunnel that led from the house to the brewery. And the wine and beer cellars, laundry, and kitchen were all located in the basement.
Cool.
So that's kind of the layout, if you will. But now onto the tragedies.
I love a good tragedy.
So the demise of the Lemp Empire is one of great mercantile mysteries of St. Louis, if you will. The first major fissure in the Lemp dynasty occurred when Frederick Lemp, William's favorite son and the heir apparent to the brewery presidency, died.
His favorite son.
It was his favorite son. Like everything says that he literally was like, oh, my Frederick, my.
And keep in mind, it was not abnormal to declare your favorite child.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because the favorite, it doesn't just mean I love you the most. It means the most favored, the one who will be the heir to all things,
Yep.
who will get all of the control, who
Okay.
is at the head of the family when it is all over. So it sounds like this is my favorite boy, which it is, but it also is. You hear that a lot. Favorite son meaning the one to take over.
Sure.
So when Frederick Lemp passed, he died under mysterious circumstances in 1901 at 28 years old.
Wow.
Where's that second favorite son then?
Right. He's coming up. Don't you worry. But his death deeply affected William Lemp Sr. And the devastation that he felt was never recovered. And eventually he began to slowly withdraw, and he was rarely seen in public after his son's death.
Wow.
And then on January 1st, 1904, William's closest friend, Frederick Pabst, also died, leaving William indifferent to the details of running the brewery. And though he arrived at the office daily, he was nervous and unsettled. His physical and mental health began to decline, and on February 13th, 1904, he shot himself in the head with a .38 caliber Smith & Wesson.
Wow.
And that is just one of the first of all of this.
Wow.
So now we're moving on to William J. Lemp Jr. and his wife Lillian, who have honestly a story that could be written into a whole afternoon TV kind of drama.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
No questions.
But William J. Lemp Jr. succeeded his father as president, inheriting the family business and a vast fortune. So I guess that does make him the second favorite son, if you will. But he and his wife Lillian began to spend the inheritance, filling the house with servants. The pair spent vast amounts on carriages, clothing, art. And Lillian was a beautiful woman who came from a wealthy family herself. She and William Lemp Jr. had married in 1899, and William J. Lemp III was born on September 26, 1900. Before long, Lillian became known as the Lavender Lady because of her fondness of the color. In addition to her lavender attire and accessories, she went so far as to have her carriage horse harnesses dyed lavender. Initially, William enjoyed showing off his trophy wife, if you will, but William was, to put it lightly, a player. Nar. So William began to tire of his wife, and he demanded that she spend her time shopping and allotting her $1,000 a day, which for the early 1900s is a lot of money.
Yeah.
To spend a day.
Today, it's a lot of money.
Exactly.
I don't know what early 1900s, nothing.
Right.
I'll take a $1,000 a day allowance, please.
I would also take that as well. Pay up.
Oh, me?
It is the husband's duty, apparently.
God.
So, no, I wouldn't take $1,000 a day to be around this man. So we'll get into that. Anyways, he gave her an ultimatum that she would get no more if she didn't spend it.
Oh.
which is a weird ultimatum to give, but whatever.
It reminds me of that old movie Brewster's Millions. Where it's like you just have to spend all this money or you get nothing.
Exactly.
Brewster's Millions.
It's a Richard Pryor movie.
Oh, really?
He inherits $30 million, but can only, but has to spend it all in a month in order to get $300 million.
Oh,
Interesting.
Yeah, that's a very interesting concept. I
So-
could do it.
Yeah, I could too, probably.
There are
But-
stipulations. There were lots of
Yeah, I'm
interesting
sure.
stipulations.
I'm sure.
But William was busy running the brewery during the day and perusing all manner of decadent activities, if you will, during the night.
How cleverly worded.
Holding lavish parties in the caves below the mansion, he would bring in numerous prostitutes for the entertainment of his friends. They would enjoy the swimming pool, the bowling alley, and the free-flowing beer. His friends who attended these lavish events were known to enjoy a high time in the earth below. Now, Will's shenanigans caught up with him when he sired a son with a woman other than his wife.
Oh. Hold on. I got one for that. Is it this one?
I don't know.
We don't know.
Sure was. All right, that's it, Manny.
All right. So, basically, there were rumors that this boy was hidden in the mansion attic for his entire life, and it had been prevalent over the years. According to St. Louis historian Joe Gibbons, when he interviewed a former nanny and a chauffeur who worked at the mansion long ago, they verified that the boy existed and was housed in the attic quarters that also housed the servants' rooms. He was spawned from William's philandering, if you will, with either one of the many prostitutes or a mansion servant. The boy was born with Down syndrome. Now, before I go into what they say further on, this is not of the opinions of us. I'm just saying the terms that they used in this particular time. But basically, for the family, this child was a total embarrassment to the family, and the boy was hidden away
Lord.
from the world to cloak the Lemp's shame.
Oh, my God.
And they called him the monkey face boy.
Oh, Lord.
So this unfortunate soul continued to show his presence at the Lemp Mansion. And in 1906, Will's mother died of cancer on April 16th. So that was one of the pivoting points with the child and with the mother dying. That was when things started to spiral for Lillian and William Jr. In 1908, William filed for divorce from Lillian, and Lillian almost lost custody of William Lemp III, which was their child together, not the one hidden in the attic. Because of a photograph presented at the trial that showed her smoking a cigarette. She almost lost custody.
Wow.
And ultimately, she retained custody of their son, but soon retired from the public eye. The only time she was ever seen wearing anything other than lavender was on the final day of her divorce proceedings when she appeared entirely in black before the judge.
Oh, I love that.
So,
Statement.
exactly.
Statement.
It was quite the statement.
What a Z-snap. Yeah.
So, yeah. So tragedy continued to follow the Lemps after all of this. The brewery's fortunes continued to decline after Prohibition, and which it closed the plant permanently in 1919. So William Jr.'s sister, Elsa, who was considered the wealthiest heiress in St. Louis, she ended up committing suicide on March 20th, 1920.
Wow.
Only a year after the plant closed. She was known to be unhappy in her marriage and have recently divorced and reconciled with her husband. And then on June 28th, 1922, the Lemp Brewery, which had once been valued at $7 million and covered Tid City blocks, was sold at auction to International Shoe Company for only $588,500. So kind of crazy. Deep discount. So although most of the company's assets were liquidated, the Lemps kept the mansion due to their deep attachment to it. And after the sale of the brewery, William J. Lemp Jr. slipped into a depression, which you can imagine. I mean, he's had a lot happen in a very short amount of time, but
Meteoric rise, meteoric fall.
exactly.
Jeez.
So he slipped into a depression, acting much like his father. He became increasingly nervous and erratic, shunning public life, and often complaining of ill health. And then on December 29th, 1922, William shot himself in the heart with a .38 caliber revolver in the very same building where his father had died 18 years before.
Goodness gracious.
He was interred in the family mausoleum at Fontaine Cemetery in the crypt just above his sister Elsa. Charles continued to reside at the house after his brother's suicide, and Charles and Edwin had long ago left the family business, so that with William Jr. gone, it seemed like the Lemp Empire kind of had finally ended, if you will. So Edwin had entered into a life of seclusion at his estate in Kirkwood, Missouri in 1911. Charles had never been involved in the brewery and had chosen to work in the banking and real estate fields instead. And in 1943, yet another tragedy occurred when William Lemp III, William Lemp Jr.'s son, died of a heart attack at the age of 42. One of the brothers, Charles, eventually remodeled the mansion back into a residence and lived in the house along with two servants and the illegitimate child of his brother, William. So the child that was up in the attic. I guess he was still living in the attic through all of this, but...
Wow.
It's
Charles,
heartbreaking.
It is heartbreaking.
It's like what's the People Under the Stairs?
Yeah.
Yes,
what it
very
reminded
much
me
so
of,
like
yeah.
that.
Or did you ever see The Boy?
The Boy, yep.
Yes.
The Boy 2.
Which just undid the twist of The Boy 1.
I know.
It's like,
Very true.
anyway.
But Charles became a bit intense as he grew older. He developed a morbid fear of germs. His obsessive compulsive behavior included always wearing gloves to avoid bacteria and constantly washing his hands. And during this time, William's illegitimate child, now in his 30s, died at the mansion, probably because he was kept in an attic his whole life, is what I would believe.
Yeah.
I can't imagine he was given
Adequate care.
Adequate, yeah, exactly.
And also, the supervision must have been pretty lax. There could have been any number of accidents that he could have gotten into.
Exactly.
Because I had heard varying accounts on his death.
Right.
You know, because everybody wants to conflate it into like a real scary story, but it's really just tragedy.
It
just
is.
tragedy after tragedy.
Well, and what's even sadder is when he was buried on the Lemp family's plot with not inside that mausoleum, the mausoleum we just saw, not in the mausoleum. He was buried on the plot with only a small flat marker with the word Lemp on it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
They
So-
treated that kid like trash.
Literally.
Yo.
Which unfortunately wouldn't have been abnormal for the time, especially in high society.
Yeah, but have a heart.
They didn't have hearts.
They didn't have hearts, and
Yeah.
it shows in the way fate consumed them.
Right.
Their hearts were limp.
Exactly. So Charles was also an extremely bitter man. He ended up living a very reclusive existence. And shortly after the attic child died, Charles became the fourth member of the Lemp family to commit suicide. So first he shot his Doberman Pinscher in the mansion's basement. And then he climbed the staircase to his room on the second floor where he shot himself. Charles was discovered on May 10th, 1949 by one of his staff. Some do say that it was his brother Edwin who found him, but that's varying. Still holding a .38 caliber Army Colt revolver in his right hand.
What is with the 38 with these people?
I guess maybe it's the family's
dang.
gun.
Could be the
and-
same 38.
Yeah.
Right.
Jeez.
And they're like, well, gonna go like the rest of them, I guess. But
It might just be like in the house being like, Chekhov's gun, literally like.
womp. Very
Do you hear
possible.
that? Wong. It calls to me. Wong.
Why they got to do the dog like that though?
And it was his beloved dog too, which
Yeah.
is kind of crazy. You know?
Seriously, that is just like nuts.
Well, and the dog was shot in the basement, but the body of the dog was found halfway up the stairs.
What?
Yeah, so that
So
dog like was trying to like
They didn't.
come
So he
after
didn't hit
him.
the dog all the way. I mean, he didn't hit the dog in the right area.
No.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal.
This is a brutal one, huh?
Yeah.
This is a brutal one.
So really, the only member of the Lemp family who didn't die in a very tragic or brutal manner was Edwin, who wanted nothing to do with the family business.
Right.
And in 1970, Edwin Lemp died of natural causes at the age of 90.
Dang.
Yeah.
He made it.
Dang.
And
he did make it.
He did. And according to Edwin's last wishes, his butler burned all of the paintings that the Lemps had collected throughout his life. So all the
Interesting.
priceless Lemp family documents and artifacts are nowhere to be found anymore.
Dang.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because he was like, this lineage dies with me,
Yeah, I mean,
basically,
yeah.
which, I mean, I don't blame him for that in a lot of ways. But onto the haunting side of things. So after the death of Charles Lemp, the mansion was sold and turned into a boarding house, which is not uncommon, with a lot of these big mansions. We saw it a lot with the Savannah houses, if you will, the Davenport house. That same thing happened. So the building began to deteriorate along with the nearby neighborhood, and the haunting tales began. Residents complained of ghostly knocks and phantom footsteps being heard throughout the house. As these stories spread, tenants were hard to find for the boarding house, and it continued to decline to a near flophouse status. And in 1975, the mansion was saved when Dick Pointer and his family purchased it. Immediately, they renovated the building, turning it into a restaurant and inn, which is what it is
now.
nowadays.
Yeah.
And workers within the house often told stories of apparitions, strange sounds, vanishing tools, and a feeling of being watched. Frightened by the hauntings, many would leave the job site never to return, which I don't blame them, to be honest, because,
There's some bad juju there.
There's a lot of really weird energy, but nonetheless, again, after these experiences, people started, who were coming to stay at the inn or eating in the restaurant, would report apparitions appearing and then quickly vanishing, voices and sounds coming from nowhere. Glasses would lift off the bar, flying through the air by themselves. And on occasions, doors are said to lock and unlock by themselves. Lights unexplainably turn on and off on their own, and the piano bar often plays when no one is near. The inn is said to be haunted by several members of the Lemp family, and there are 3 areas of the mansion that are said to be the most active, one of which being the stairway, the attic, and what the staff refer to as the gates of hell, which is the basement.
Oh wow. The gates of hell.
Yes. And the basement...
Is that is the basement the cavern? Or
so the
Okay.
basement...
But it's built up.
Okay.
Yeah.
There are like pillars and like hallways.
Yeah, I have
and,
a photo of it. Maddie, do you want me to show that?
Yeah,
or-
go ahead and show it.
Yes.
Yes, that's exactly it. So the area of the basement used to be the entrance to the caves running below the mansion and the brewery, which the basement also connected to a tunnel that led to the brewery, which is crazy.
Which is how I got access.
Exactly.
The more I think about it, the more deeply illegal it probably was.
Exactly. So there's not a lot of photos online of the attic, and I'm sure there's probably reasoning as to why. Probably because they don't want guests wandering up into their attic.
No doubt.
But
Although, keep in mind that the attic was also the servants' quarters.
exactly.
So it is an ample space, and maybe it is accessible. There just isn't any pictures.
So the attic is said to be haunted by William Jr.'s son, the illegitimate son. And I will say, I don't like that they still use this name just because it feels insensitive to spirits, but he is still referred to as the monkey face boy because
Goodness.
They didn't ever get a name on him.
The names, because I think when I'd heard it, they called him Billy, but they were quick to say they did not know his name, but they called him Billy, which would be William Jr., somewhere between William Jr. and William III was Billy.
Yeah.
But they were quick to say they don't think that's his name.
They
And
probably
in
just
all
don't
the
wanna call
stories
him
that I had heard of him, he died as a child. So it was interesting when you said he died when he was 30 or in his 30s, because the stories, and that's the way stories go. The way ghost stories go is Billy, the child born with Down syndrome, kept in the attic, lived in the walls of the building, and that constant story was so you hear him like scratching on the walls, or you hear him like his voice behind the wall and things like that. So it's really interesting because how do you hide the name?
Yeah.
Right.
You know, because even his tombstone is just the family name Lemp, which is interesting that they put Lemp on his on his marker. You know, so that in itself is like, what's his name? What's his actual name? God, please tell me it's not Monkey. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously.
You know, this is horrible.
It is. It's really gnarly, and they probably started calling him Billy because if I was a tour guide there, I'd like, I can't refer to this entity as that.
Not.
That's just, ugh. But yeah, there's an interesting photo out there, and maybe I'll try to find it and post it on Patreon. But I saw a photo where they had this entity standing in one of the windows up where the attic would have been.
Right.
And it definitely looked like the size of a grown man. So, you know, and a lot of people claim that it is that son.
Yes. Right.
But yeah, so strange occurrences are often witnessed in the attic area. And so the face of that son has regularly been seen from the street, peeking from the small window of the mansion.
Okay.
And investigators have often left toys in the middle of his room, drawing a circle around them to see if the objects have moved. And when they return the next day, the toys are consistently found in another location.
Boy, I'm telling you right now, ghost hunters, man, they love giving toys to a kid ghost.
Yeah, they do.
Every single time there's a kid ghost, there's like a bunch of random toys.
Right. Well,
even when we're at Waverly Hills, there are toys all over.
There really were.
And Conjuring.
Yeah. Well, Conjuring even made more sense because you're in a nursery, but like sometimes you're walking around Waverly Hills, you're like, that was a Beanie Baby over here.
Exactly. There were so many toys, but also people have reported hearing the very faint voice of a child saying repeatedly, "Help me, help me," up in the attic. So, yeah, it's that's probably the most disturbing haunting inside the house. But the women's bathroom is also incredibly haunted, which is that photo that JT's showing. But many women have reported a man peeking over the stall in the downstairs women's bathroom.
So that's Will Jr.
Yes. And
make
it
sure
was
it's a
eventually
ghost first.
right. Well, so here's the thing.
No feet.
Heard.
That particular bathroom was once William Jr.'s personal domain, and it held the first freestanding shower, which is what you're seeing, in St. Louis, which, if you can't tell, the Lemp family were all about status with their home.
Mm-hmm.
But on
so
one
much so they kept a kid in an attic.
literally. On one occasion, a woman emerged from the bathroom and returned to the bar and told the two men she was with in there, that she was with, she told them, "I hope you got an eyeful." And the two men quickly denied ever leaving the bar, which the bartender verified.
Dang.
The ghost is said to be that of William Jr.
We got a ghost like that in the Pink House.
Yes. Peep and Tom.
Peep and Tom ghosts. And let's face it, you get bored as a ghost.
I guess so.
It's like,
bruh,
what you doing? What's going on?
Still pretty creepy, though.
How you doing?
But William Lemp Sr.'s room is also very haunted. This room is said to have a particularly heavy and oppressive atmosphere. People who enter the room often report feeling sudden chills, unease, or even overwhelming sadness. Some have claimed to see the apparition of William Lemp Sr. sitting at his desk or standing by the window. In William Lemp Sr.'s room, guests have often reported hearing someone running up the stairs and kicking at the door.
Oof.
When William committed suicide, William Jr. was known to have run up the stairs to his father's room and, finding it locked, began to kick the door in to get to his father.
Okay.
So several years ago, a part-time tour guide reported hearing the sounds of horses outside the room where William Lemp Sr. had kept his office. So apparently there are ghost horses as well. And however, nothing was there when the tour guide looked through the window. And this area north of the mansion is now used as a parking lot, but it was once utilized as a tether lot for horses.
Interesting.
So
Okay.
you can also hear ghost horses in that room. Now the basement.
The basement.
Dun, dun, dun.
So the basement is 50 feet below street level. It is so deep that there are eyeless cave fish that swim through there.
Eyeless cavefish.
Yes.
I need to catch them.
Yeah. So if you show that like little pool right there, that's kind of some of the water that they see the eyeless cave fish.
I definitely need to catch some cavefish in my life. That's bucket list.
In a haunted location.
Yeah.
Haunted
Cave
fish.
fish.
No, those specific cavefish.
So
Yeah.
wait, are you saying you need fish?
Ooh.
Wow. The people
Who didn't watch
who
the
didn't watch
fix.
the fix don't understand.
That's right. This is an inside joke.
Yes. But it also got its dark name due to it supposedly being, or dark reputation, supposedly being used as a makeshift hospital during the Prohibition era. And so apparitions people often claim to see down there are shadow figures or apparitions of members of the Lemp family, particularly the figure of William Lemp Sr., who is said to kind of roam around there. I mean, obviously, he spent a lot of time down in that basement, because it was his house, but also because it connected to
wanted
the
to fish.
brewery, and he wanted to fish for eyeless fish.
Yep.
But there are also unexplained sounds. There are reports of footsteps, banging, and whispers heard coming from empty parts of the basement. Some report hearing voices pleading or crying. People often experience cold spots and sudden drops in temperature. And some visitors often report feeling unseen hands touching them, tugging at their clothes, or feeling a sensation of being watched or followed. So the basement also has a number of reports saying that it brings forth a feeling of overwhelming sadness, anxiety, or fear when they enter the basement, which suddenly lifts when they leave the area, which could be attributed, in my opinion, to William Sr.
Yes,
Because those are
absolutely.
all emotions that he exhibited before he passed.
Well, and yeah, that is actually kind of common whenever you're in a place where suicide has occurred. You get those oppressive, dark sensations and feelings because those are the feelings that overtake people who take their lives. And that building has seen so many suicides in a familial bloodline.
Right.
It's very it's hard to imagine that there wouldn't be energy-wise just this overwhelming dark presence.
Exactly. There's also the Lavender Lady, but she's not in the basement.
Lavender Lady.
Which I really like. So, but one of the most frequently reported apparitions is that of the Lavender Lady, who is believed to be Lillian Lemp. And guests and staff have reported seeing a woman dressed in lavender, and a strong scent of lavender often accompanies her presence. And so Lillian, of course, as we talked about earlier, her entire life, she wore lavender except for the day that she got her divorce, which strong move, Lillian. Good for you.
Show them what's what.
But she was known to constantly be wearing lavender. And if we're going off the notion that you appear as what you felt the most yourself in as a spirit, it makes total sense that Lillian.
And it becomes an identifier too.
Right.
Because even when people lost the name, they remember the Lavender Lady.
Exactly.
And you just become the Lavender Lady. You kind of lose the Lillian part. You just start going with, the most, the peaks of the iceberg, what's sticking out to the surface and people can see. So yeah, and the Lavender Lady is one of the famous ghosts of America. Knowing, in the hierarchy, it's up there with Resurrection Mary and the Bell Witch and things like that. In the list, people know the Lavender Lady, Lady in White, Lavender Lady, the Woman in Black, Lady in Black, all of that.
So I feel like Lillian would have been perfectly fine with being identified as
yes,
just
absolutely.
the Lavender Lady in her life.
She graduated to her true self.
Exactly. With the staircase, a number of visitors have reported seeing apparitions on the main staircase. One of the most common sightings is that of a young boy, and a lot of people believe that this is the illegitimate son of William Lemp Jr., which is not impossible that he could be haunting the home in multiple ways.
Absolutely.
Because out of all of them, even though, all of these family members were committing suicide and whatnot, I feel like he had the most tragic life out of all of them. So he would be the more...
Staining the walls with his tragedy.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's interesting, too, because there is the notion that in many ways he never grew out of his childhood because he was probably treated like a child his whole life. He was probably never given an opportunity to experience life as an adult. So manifesting as a child makes sense given his circumstances. So there's a lot to be said about that. And that's again, from my recollection, it seems like they were suggesting that he died as a child because it was a child ghost that everyone saw. So, and this was also 20 plus years ago. So,
yeah, I was about to say, when did you go?
Late 90s.
Late 90s. Okay.
Yeah. And that's the thing with his story in particular. There is a lot of variation on it because obviously the Lemps were not documenting his existence, if at all.
Right. We don't even really know his name.
Exactly. So, but I think the thought process that he definitely could have died in his 30s, at least going off of what Edwin was saying. But it's like, if that is the case, it totally makes sense that he would show up as a child.
Absolutely.
And also, if I was haunting a house where I was trapped in one room for my entire existence, I would also go wandering around. You know, so
absolutely, I would make every open area mine.
Exactly.
As a ghost.
So it makes total sense. But with the staircase, the banister also vibrates on its own. So the visitors have reported feeling the banister vibrate as if somebody is running their hand along it or tapping on it. And these vibrations are often felt even though no one is on the stairs. And then there are physical interactions on the stairs. So some people experience the feeling of light touch or tug on their clothing or their hair while they're on the stairs. And these interactions are usually brief but distinct, leading to many believe that the spirits are trying to make contact. But there's also the sensation of pushing. A few people have experienced a sensation of being pushed or pulled while on the stairs, which is interesting. I don't know who would be doing that. Maybe that is somebody's ghost they dropped off in this house. Who knows? But
who knows?
Now, these experiences are less common, but they can be quite frightening, especially when descending the staircase. But the next room that people encounter things is in the family dining room. And the Lemp family was known to entertain guests lavishly. And this room was the center of many social gatherings. And most of the hauntings that are inside the dining room are a bit more on the side of a residual haunting. And so a lot of people who have experienced things inside of the dining room have reported seeing apparitions of people dressed in period clothing, as well as hearing the sound of laughter, clinking glasses, and the sound of conversation as if a dinner party were in progress. But there are also people who have reported seeing phantom servants. So in addition to these guests that are sitting in the room, people have seen figures resembling servants or waitstaff, and these particular entities are oftentimes seen moving quickly around the room as if they are serving an invisible dinner party.
Ooh, interesting.
And they are described as wearing uniforms typical of the era when the Lemps would have occupied the mansion.
This is very like classic haunting.
It is. It's very
It is
classic.
a
So
template
classic.
for most haunted stories. The Lemp Mansion is the perfect study of a haunted house.
Yeah.
It has all of the apparition, all of the history, all of the it's a checklist, and countless ghost stories that people are familiar with actually are derivatives of the Lemp family.
Sure.
When you think about how many times you've heard these stories, these types of stories, it's like, well, it all started somewhere.
Exactly.
And right at the turn of the century started this string of tragedies that would be baked into all forms of stories, the haunting of Hell House, all of these common ghost stories. It's like, oh, okay, this house has it all.
It has it all.
Exactly.
It has it all.
It really does. And the last room that we'll talk about that is considered to be haunted is Elsa Lemp's room. So Elsa Lemp was one of the daughters, was actually the only daughter of William Lemp Sr., who also committed suicide. And so that she didn't die in the house, but her presence is often felt in the house.
Sure.
And it's particularly in the room that was hers. So many guests and investigators have reported seeing the ghostly figure of a woman believed to be Elsa. And the descriptions often include a woman in the early 20th century clothing, sometimes appearing sad or contemplative. And so witnesses have seen her standing by the window, sitting on the bed, or moving about the room as if she is in deep thought. And besides the clear apparition of Elsa, people do experience seeing shadow figures as well inside of this room. People hear a lot of disembodied voices, a lot of whispers and soft speaking. And then there are also times where people hear voices that are sometimes unintelligible, but on occasion words or phrases can be discerned, such as help, why, or even names. Okay. And then a lot of times people hear what sounds like a woman crying or sobbing coming from this room.
Ooh, creepy. I love that.
Yeah. So that is the Lemp Mansion.
And it is an operating bed and breakfast and restaurant. You can stay there overnight for the cost of a hotel room.
And you can stay in William Lemp Sr.'s room.
Yep.
You can stay in Elsa's room.
You can stay in Elsa's room.
So if that
about
is
$250 a night from what I was
it's just not
That's
bad.
pretty much a hotel room.
Yeah.
A pretty standard hotel room. The restaurant is pretty highly acclaimed. It's a good restaurant.
Yeah.
On top of that,
Have you
but
eaten there?
what's very interesting?
Did you eat there?
No, I just know the
okay.
the reputation. I never got into the mansion.
Okay.
I came from the brewery side.
Oh.
And it's sitting on top of a very fascinating cave network. Because you can actually, I believe there's a way to get in through the caves into the cave network.
Wow.
St. Louis is a very interesting town. I love St. Louis, actually. There's a lot of really cool attributes of St. Louis that I've always enjoyed. Like most of the public arts are free. Like the museums are free. The zoo is free.
That's really cool.
The government subsidizes all of that. And so the town is very artsy and very cool. And its story is very much such a classic ghost story. It's just like straight up a family that was plagued by suicide, really. That's a lot of suicide for a very tight group of people.
Right.
When you're taking like 7 people and 5 of them committed suicide, that's intense. That's a big number. So and I believe they have like a ghost tour, an actual ghost tour that happens in the building as well. So, there's a lot of things. If you're in the area, I think that is got to be worth the visit. I've always wanted to go back. I've always wanted to be on the mansion side. We can do it. Absolutely.
We can do it. I mean, St. Louis ain't that far. We can fly there.
It's a 10-hour drive.
Yeah. Oh, I wasn't saying drive there. Oh, boy. But, I mean, I guess we kind of have to with some of the equipment we got. But we got to figure that one out.
Yeah. We can make it work.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is interesting. They also do a haunted house down in the basement in October,
Yes,
which is
I've heard that.
kind of funny.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, they
All right, we'll make the Lemp Mansion an option, and
We'll put the
we're
Lemp
gonna,
Mansion
we're
on
gonna
the list.
put,
Put it on the list.
What we're gonna do is we're on Patreon. We're gonna I'm gonna create a poll when we're ready to make the choice of where we're going next. I'm gonna make a poll, and the Pair Junkies will decide.
Yeah,
so Lemp
absolutely.
Mansion will be on the poll.
And
Then.
Pair Junkies, if you have suggestions, please send them in.
Yeah, please.
Ghost mail. Give us a heads up if there are places that you want to see us go or that you've always wanted explored or talked about
Exactly.
on the show. There's lots of locations. I just stumbled across that S.K. Pierce Mansion in Massachusetts.
Yes, you sent
Which,
us that one.
yes,
Yeah.
which looks amazing. The house itself just looks like somebody drew a haunted house.
Yeah.
It was like, here you go.
exactly.
Look, check it out. But a lot of people have profound experiences there.
Sure.
Dalen went to the Sally House recently.
The what is it?
The Sally House.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
He just put up a YouTube. If you haven't seen Dalen Spratt's YouTube about going to the Sally House, apparently he had quite the experience there.
Okay, very cool.
Wow. That's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
But do we have time for one last segment, or are we?
Nah, we have time for a segment. Let's do it.
Okay. We were thinking, well, I was thinking we could end with one ghost mail.
All right.
Oh, excellent.
Are there
One
photos
ghost
associated
mail.
with it? 'Cause I
There's
don't have
not.
it plugged in. Okay, cool.
End with a ghost mail.
Ending with the ghost mail.
So
You've got ghost mail.
this ghost mail comes from Becca. So Becca said, "Hi, y'all. This is going to be a short, mundane-ish ghost mail, but it literally just happened to me at 4:30 a.m., and I cannot go back to sleep because I'm kind of freaked out. We will always accept your middle-of-the-night ghost encounters literally as they happen." So
And keep in mind, mundane is truly where ghosts exist. Once you start to accept that these are regular and ordinary experiences, they don't all have to be, a headless man came and spit up blood on my cat.
right.
It can be, something that is just off of what you're used to. And please feel free to share those.
Exactly. But before I start, my boyfriend and I moved into an apartment building in downtown Cleveland that was originally a warehouse. We have exposed brick and ceilings, so you can see the wear and tear of this place when it was a warehouse. Our apartment specifically is a hybrid one-bedroom studio apartment loft. The wall in between our bedroom and living room is only a half height wall, which means we can hear everything that goes on in our living room. Also, directly on the other side of our short bedroom wall is my office desk with a laptop hooked up to a monitor. Okay, so now you know the setup for my apartment. Let me dive right on in. So early this morning, I woke up to my computer monitor turning on, then off. It will make a little tune when it does this. That's normal. Then, as I'm still laying awake, I start to hear what I can only compare to typing.
Oh, gosh.
At first, it's slow, one key at a time. My first thought was, okay, my cats. I look at the cat on my bed and I notice it's Thelma snuggled up to me, which leaves the only other cat, Lizzie, to do what I'm thinking is walking or pawing, ? With the keyboard. However, this is super weird to me because Liz is not at all the type to be messing with anything that makes loud noises, let alone jump onto a swivel chair without freaking out as it moves, but anything is possible, ? Anyways, I am now trying to fall back to sleep when I hear it start up again. This time, a lot faster. It's still one key at a time, but now I can hear the click of the mouse pad on my laptop along with the key taps. A few taps of keys, then a mouse pad click, a few more taps, double clicks. Not in any type of pattern, but this goes on for a good while, probably 5 minutes. At this point, I'm kind of freaked out, and of course, my bladder is like, time to pee. So I'm like, RIP, I'm literally that white woman who dies first in horror movies, but I have to get up. As I start to stir more to get out of bed, the typing stopped. This is when I thought, okay, it's weird, but it must have been Lizzie. She heard me and she got spooked and got down. I just didn't hear her chunky thump as she jumped down.
Chunky thumb.
Chunky Thump. It's gonna be my new band name.
Chunky
The
thump.
chunky thumps.
I know,
Cleveland, we are Chunky Thump.
I know that chunky thump noise very well, but we call it a clump in our house. But so I use the bathroom, then I make my way out to the living room. Lizzie's just snoozing away on the couch, and I walk over to my laptop. I gently click a key, and I think it was the letter S to verify the sound I heard. Not only do I freaking verify the sounds, like 1 second later, that one random key wakes my monitor up. My computer monitor attached to my laptop, of course, makes the tune that it makes when it turns on. You know, the sound I originally woke up to. So after the realization of there is no way in heck it could have been Lizzie, she's 15 pounds. If she was walking on the keyboard, it would have 100% turned on. And yes, I did think, well, maybe she was pawing at it and she didn't really press any keys. However, you cannot gently click my mouse pad. You have to put some oomph to get that thing to click. Thanks to Spilled Ice Caramel Coffee for that neat feature on my laptop.
A handy feature.
Yes. At this point, I am truly dumbfounded. Did a ghost just try to use my computer? Why didn't the computer turn on? Those were defined clicks and taps. Is this normal for ghosts to type on computers? After that, I did what a normal person would do. I turned on my TV for some lighting because F the darkness. I'm trying my best not to outwardly acknowledge what just happened in fear that if I acknowledge it, more will happen. Also, as I'm typing this, again, I got up to check my laptop once again because I'm freaked out and confused. But the results were the same as before. This is the first unnatural thing to happen in my apartment. I swear, if I see something spooky, I'm going to respectfully leave my earthly body and ascend out of sheer terror. LOL. Thank you for reading. I had to share, even if it was probably more mundane than the other ghost mail you read. Thanks.
No,
That
it
was
wasn't
not
mundane.
mundane at all.
No,
that was pretty
great.
incredible. It reminds
Yeah.
me of a ghost story that I had heard about a woman whose computer would come on in the middle of the night and she would hear the tickety tackety,
Yeah.
and it kept happening at intervals. And one night she finally decides to stay up and watch it, and sure enough, the computer comes on, tickety tackety, and what she sees is a name being typed out.
Ooh.
So
Maybe he was trying to communicate.
well,
Literally.
Hang on, story's not over.
Okay.
The woman goes to the computer, pulls up a search engine, and types the name in, and it's a woman who was found murdered, and assaulted and murdered.
Irma Gerd.
So when she finds this out, she asks around about this woman, and they're like, we don't know her, but the guy who lived in your apartment before you used to have lots of women come and go. He ended up getting arrested for the murder.
That's good. That's good. So
ghosts using electronics is not, it's actually not even new.
Yeah.
A lot of people have experiences, phones for a long time.
Yeah.
Phones would ring and they'd answer, and then like a voice on the phone would say something cryptic and strange. So with every advance in technology, you kind of get these stories about spirits. You're learning to utilize the technology.
Yes. I'm going to say, Rebecca, definitely leave Google, Word on or Google
Right.
Docs and see what it's trying to tell you.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
That's super creepy.
If it spells something, she's going to go. She's
Yeah,
gonna,
we're gonna
she's
lose.
out.
We're gonna lose her.
She said respectfully, I will.
I will
leave.
Be brave. Be brave.
We have to know. Report back.
And if-
Or get a so Wise makes a security camera that's very cheap. I think you can get it for like $10 to $15. It's a little USB security camera. You can actually put it down right in front of the keyboard of your computer, and any movement will set it off. It'll turn on at the slightest movement. So like dust particles will set it off, and it will record anything that's moving in the area. So a Wise security camera, WYZE, and they're little boxes. And they're cheap, they're easy. You can hook them up to Wi-Fi, but it's best to kind of like stick a SD card in them. But I think that's a great tool for ghost hunting, for lack of a better word. You pepper those around your house because they're cheap. Mm-hmm. They are motion activated, so if something's moving in your house, they start recording. And for as long as something's moving in your house, they will record that movement. So I strongly suggest getting that.
And if it is Lizzie, I'm sure she's typing a very important message.
Oh,
to
right.
you.
Your cat is like,
Yeah. She's like,
more kibbles.
more feed.
More feed.
But
I
yeah.
am chunky.
Chonky thump. But thank you all so much for listening to today's episode. If you have a particular haunting that you want us to do a deep dive into, just let us know down in the comments. Also, like we said earlier, if you want to try out a free trial on Patreon, the option is there for you. So with that, my name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susi.
And stay spooky, y'all.